Funny thing about life in the mountains, just when you think you've found your peace, a storm shows up in a pearl necklace and heels holding a clipboard like it's loaded. That's exactly how my quiet little world turned upside down one bitter September morning in Wyoming. Picture this. I'm out front splitting firewood in the cold hoodie up earbuds in, watching my breath fog in the air, totally minding my own business when she appears on my porch. There's Lillian Brooks, Silver Pine's HOA president. Perfect posture, not a hair out of place, lips pressed in a thin line that sure as hell didn't say good morning. In our neck of the woods, Lillian had more power than the sheriff, or at least she thought she did. Me name's Ethan Walker. Been out here for 4 years, bought 5 acres on the edge of this so-called planned community for the space, the quiet, and frankly the right to live without someone measuring my grass. The mountains out here don't mess around. Pine trees everywhere, snow that'll break your back, winters where the mercury drops so low you start bargaining with your own toes. We get power outages that last days, sometimes a week. So I do what anyone with half a brain would do. I stack firewood, line up the propane tanks, run a generator, and check my backups. Not overkill, just survival. At least that's what I thought. Lillian didn't even bother with hello, just snapped her clipboard open and announced, "Ethan, we need to talk about your property." She pointed right at my propane tanks like she was in court and I was the defendant on trial. This is unacceptable. Honestly, it took me a second. Unacceptable how apparently it was an eyesore. Too much. Violated community standards. I actually let out a laugh. "Lillian, we live in the mountains. 6 months of winter. This is how you don't freeze to death." She didn't budge. Just clicked her pearls, then shoved an official letter in my face. 30 days to chop my firewood pile in half and keep only 1 propane tank. Half a cord wouldn't last me through January, not even close. And 1 tank, my stove generator and heater, all run on propane. She gave me that patronizing smile as if she was explaining math to a 6-year-old. "The rules are the rules, Ethan. Sacrifices must be made for the good of the community." I asked her where exactly these rules were written, and she sniffed Section 14, subsection C. The board can implement new standards. I'd read the bylaws back when I bought the place, vague as a foggy morning. Talk of maintenance, safety, and appearance, but nothing about fuel or storage limits. They were stretching community standards further than my last paycheck. I told her as much, but she just turned on her heel. "Take it up with the board. The notice stands." And just like that, she was gone, leaving me holding a threat disguised as a letter. Spent the next 2 hours at my kitchen table, every HOA document spread out, highlighter in hand, searching for any line justifying this nonsense. Nothing. So I started firing off emails, civil, reasonable, laying out the reality of blackouts and blizzards and why being prepared isn't just stubbornness. Every reply was a template. "Dear homeowner, please comply. Failure will result in fines." Sure enough, day 31, the fines rolled in, $50 a day. I didn't budge. The letters got meaner. Certified mail, legal threats, talk of liens, foreclosure. At some point, it became crystal clear this wasn't about firewood or propane. This was about control. Started asking around. Over the fence, on dog walks, quiet conversations at the coffee shop. Turns out I wasn't the only one under fire. Maria, a few doors down, got cited for too many garden decorations. Kevin across the street fined for parking his company truck in his own driveway. Someone else got slapped for outdoor furniture not being approved. A pattern emerged: selective enforcement. And every bit of it came back to Lillian and her grip on the board. The real twist, though, came from Maria. Turns out Lillian's brother-in-law, Marcus Hale, owned the management company that handled all our HOA's finances. Suddenly, a lot of things made sense. I asked for financial records. Legally, as a homeowner, that's my right. They stalled, ignored, stonewalled until I threatened legal action. When they finally handed over the files, I nearly choked. 15 grand a month for management, triple the going rate. Repair charges for things nobody remembered. Inspections no one saw. Meanwhile, winter was closing in. Fines hit 3,000, then 5. Another letter arrived, red ink, foreclosure warning. Enough was enough. Spent some late nights at the county records office digging through old development plans, utility maps, contracts. That's where I found the real kicker. Silver Pines was built with a centralized propane system, underground lines run by Hill Community Management. Most folks paid for propane through their HOA dues, marked up, bundled, hidden. Except me. The last owner started disconnecting. I finished the job, got my own supplier, and tanks cut my costs by a third. That's what made me dangerous. If more people followed, Hill would lose thousands. That's when everything clicked: the rules, the fines, the threats. This wasn't about keeping the neighborhood pretty. They wanted to scare me back into their overpriced system, keep the cash pipeline flowing, keep me quiet. Here's where it got interesting. HOAs are allowed to create standards, but they have to be reasonable, clearly defined, and applied equally. You can't just wake up, point at someone, and invent a new rule. That's intimidation, not governance. Lillian and her board were breaking every rule in the book. So I stopped trying to be nice. Called a lawyer, Vanessa Morales, sharp as they come. She combed through my evidence, grinned, and said, "They've screwed up Ethan. This is leverage. We moved fast, filed for an injunction, demanded an audit, sent letters to the board, and to Hill, flagged the family conflict." Then, against Vanessa's advice, I mailed every homeowner in Silver Pines a packet, all the facts, all the numbers, copies of contracts and connections laid out plain as day. The community exploded. Texts, calls, emails. Folks wanted to know if it was true, if they'd really been getting fleeced. Lillian was furious. Called me, voice shaking, accused me of spreading lies. I told her they're public records. If you're not worried, you've got nothing to hide. Silence. Click. The next HOA meeting turned into a circus. Over 100 people packed the hall. Not the usual handful. Lillian tried to bang her gavel, called for order. Kevin stood up and said, "Let's put this on the agenda." Applause. Maria wanted an audit, more applause. The board members looked rattled. Rachel Kim, voice barely above a whisper, made a motion to suspend Lillian. 4 votes for, 1 against. Lillian stormed out. 2 days later, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. Lillian accused me of harassment, tried to paint me as the bad guy. I handed over my records, texts, emails. The deputy looked embarrassed. Looks retaliatory, but I've got to document it. That's when I realized she wasn't just angry, she was scared. 3 weeks later, the audit came in and it was brutal. Hill management overbilled us by $60,000 a year. Phantom repairs, fake inspections, inflated contracts. Lillian never disclosed her family connection. The board fired Hill, filed suit, banned Lillian from leadership. Then winter really hit, -25 ice storms, rolling blackouts. My house stayed warm, wood stove burning, generator humming. But the central propane system started failing. Tom Parker, my engineer neighbor, came by worried. People losing heat, no hot water. No maintenance records anywhere. Hill had walked off with everything. 5 of us shoveled through 3 feet of snow torches and tools in hand. The vault was a wreck, corroded, broken, neglected. We patched it, rerouted lines, got heat back on. A week later, Deputy Harris called me down to the station. Detective Reed laid out a stack of messages between Lillian and Marcus just before the outage. "He's ruining everything Lillian wrote." Marcus replied, "I'll handle it." Just enough to cause problems. They still had access to the system and they sabotaged it during a cold snap, risking lives just to regain control. They were both arrested: fraud, conspiracy, utility sabotage. Headlines went wild. Marcus did time, paid restitution. Lillian got banned for life from any HOA in the state. The board cleared my fines, set new rules protecting preparedness. My setup became the example, not the enemy. Tom started running workshops every fall. Silver Pines became a real community. People talked, questioned, helped each other. After the lawsuits, audits, and repairs faded into memory, I found myself back on my porch one evening, late summer sun dipping behind the ridge. Coffee in hand, looking at the same woodpile and tanks that started all of this. Funny how something so ordinary could uncover something so rotten. Most folks buy into an HOA thinking about plowed roads and trash pickup, not corruption and power trips. We assume people in charge want what's best. Truth is, power does strange things, especially when it's small and unchecked. Some people can't help themselves. They start serving their own interests, not the community's. Here's what I learned: you don't have to shout or throw punches to stand up for yourself. Just pay attention, ask questions, read the documents. Most abuse starts small: a warning, a fine, a letter that seems like no big deal. That's when they're testing you. See if you'll fold. Knowing your rights matters more than most folks think. You don't need to be a lawyer, just understand the basics. Boards can't act on a whim. Conflicts must be disclosed. Records belong to the homeowners. Intimidation isn't leadership, it's fear. And the scariest part, I almost gave in. I almost sold off my tanks, paid those fines, went back to their rigged system. It would have been easier. but it would have meant accepting something I knew was wrong. And once you do that, it's a slippery slope. Suddenly you're living by someone else's rules and you can't even remember when you stopped questioning them. Now the board's transparent. Neighbors show up to meetings, contracts get voted on, Tom leads workshops, people prepare, not out of paranoia, but because it's just smart. Community doesn't mean uniformity. It's looking out for each other, respecting differences, sharing info, speaking up when something feels off. Still here, still splitting wood, still filling tanks every September. Nobody hassles me. Sometimes people ask for advice and I'm happy to give it. Learn that independence doesn't mean isolation, and questioning authority doesn't make you difficult. It makes you responsible. So let me ask, ever had an HOA overstep? Ever been pushed into something just to avoid trouble? Did you fight back or just go with it? Share your story below. I read them all, and honestly, sometimes the best advice comes from the folks living it, not telling it. Because all it takes sometimes to protect your home and your dignity is just stopping for a second and saying, wait, this doesn't add up, and refusing to step aside. Thanks for listening. Stay sharp, stay prepared, and don't let the clipboard crowd push you around. See you next time.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video của mình.